big ad.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Collisions YYC Current and Critical. I'm your host, Tyler Chisholm. Thank you for joining me today for another good old-fashioned chat. Today's show is brought to you in partnership with Clearmotive Marketing. Thank you to my business partner, Chad Croker, and the entire team who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to make this show a reality. As a founding partner at Clearmotive, I'm excited to announce the official launch of our industrial marketing system. As a company with 15 plus years of experience with a variety of clients in nearly every sector, we identified that industrial manufacturing companies were underserved. You have unique needs, and we have developed a unique skill set to help you succeed. If you build and sell a product that helps other companies, we have developed an industrial marketing system to get your highest priority product in front of your ideal customer profile in less than 8 weeks. Gartner recently reported that your buyers are 87% of the way through their buying process before contacting your company directly. That means it's never been more critical to apply the right marketing process to create and close more deals. Our 3-stage industrial marketing system helps you shorten your sales cycle by using modern marketing tactics designed specifically for your industry and, more importantly, for the way your clients like to buy. Stop sitting on the sidelines wondering which part of your marketing is working and put a system in place that makes it easy for your most valuable prospects to find you and get excited about your solution to their challenges. To find out more about what Clearmotive's industrial marketing system can do for you, please check us out at www.clearmotive.ca/IMS, or better yet, open up your email and contact me directly at tyler@clearmotive.ca, Tyler. I'm excited to chat with you and put a plan in place to get your most valuable leads contacting you and not your competitors. Hello and a warm Collisions YYC. Welcome to, I got 2 guests on the show today, Grace Corry and Phil Harris. How are you guys both doing today?
Awesome. Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks so much for coming on. Let's jump right into it. Insight Analytical. So Phil, I'm going to turn this one over to you. We just jumped into an elevator. Maybe we're downtown. Maybe we're back in the office. Who knows? And you're going to give me the quick little spiel. What is Insight Analytical all about? And what do you guys do? And what problems in the world do you solve?
Insight Analytical. We're kind of a manufacturer's rep distributor. We sell products, but we also provide integrated services, solutions for people. Big thing we'd like to think about us is we're pretty technical on how we approach stuff. Kind of the nerdy propeller head guys that kind of go, I really want to work out a solution here. How are we going to make something work? And we solve problems for the oil and gas industry, primarily on the measurement side of things, how they determine what products they're making and are they running their plant as well as they can.
We have so many more floors, Phil. This is going to be a good elevator. You said a couple of things that I want to kind of unpack a little bit, and just the reality of the role you like working on solutions, but yet you guys rep products, you bring products in from other manufacturers. Are you guys then taking those products and then like basically working with your clients to say, hey, here's how this can work for you? And I know that weird OEM distributor relationship, sometimes I've met a lot of companies, they're just middlemen and they just like, yeah, we can get it for you and we can get it at a good price in a timely fashion. But what I'm hearing for you guys is no, we take it further and we actually roll up our sleeves and figure out how this thing is going to work the best for you.
Exactly. Actually, we even kind of try to look at it another way, even of almost saying, instead of talking even about what product you want, you talk to us about what problem you have right now. And then we're going to try to say, hey,
fall in love with the problem, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I had an old friend who was a salesman, and he used to say, the hardest person to ever sell anything to is someone who's happy with what they're doing.
I think as a marketer, I think you just covered the nut of it. If we can keep people constantly striving for something else, we can always sell them stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
But B2B and B2C are very different. How long have you guys been around? What's your time frame? What's your history?
We incorporated in 2015. I kind of started working on it in 2013.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 2013 and 2015, like really good time to be getting into the energy sector.
Yeah.
So I think we all remember. I think it's quick we forget, but it's been a few years. In 2013, I feel my wife worked at a company and we had a bunch of options, and I think it peaked at $10, and I think it got down to 30 cents before it finally disappeared. So that pile of magic beans disappeared. I think that started at the end of 2013, if I'm not mistaken. I have a scar, I think, somewhere here on my right arm from it. Tell us about starting a business at that time.
Yeah.
What the impetus was of like, this is a great time to do this.
You're so right. I mean, I talk to people a lot of times. Grace probably gets tired of it, but I started a lot of talks off with, what makes a great boxer and a great comedian is having good timing. And my timing was horrible to start a business in the oil and gas sector. And I'm not a great boxer either, so there you go.
But and comedian, we'll decide that one at the end of the show.
We got 45 minutes to figure that out. But yeah, I was doing. I had been in the oil and gas sector since 1993. I'd been working in the sector a lot, and I had just found an opportunity. I was doing consulting work for a company in the U.S., and they had this great new product they were going to bring to market, and they had no way to sell it in Canada. And so I saw an opportunity to say, hey, we could bring this awesome technology to Canada. And it did solve a bunch of problems. Going back to what I said before, like we were doing work in the US, and we're going, hey, people are really happy with this. And there's lots of opportunities for this for guys up in Canada.
Curious about that dynamics. I've heard often, and again, I'm being very generalist here, that people look to Western Canada for our prowess and our thought leadership in our energy sector. But then, obviously other parts of the world do amazing things, and you were bringing something in. How hard it was to is that a reality for you? Are we a thought leader in that sense? And I guess, is there any correlation to us either being open or not open to new ideas coming into the sector that are going to change the quote unquote the way we've always done it?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, certainly I think we are viewed as thought leaders in a lot of the stuff. Like we do. When you hear the big plugs, the political plugs about, how we're the most environmentally, safety, governance, all that sort of stuff, all this ESG compliance and that. But it's really true. We're an industry, we're a pretty responsible member of the oil and gas industry worldwide. And we do try to bring in a lot of new ways to do things. That being said, it's an industry that can be hard to convince to adopt new technologies, especially when they've got a long track record of doing something the same, and you try to go in with something new. When I launched this in Canada, I used to joke about it. I was like a Mormon. Have you heard the word of the Lord today?
Well, and we know, and again, I'll speak for myself. I know how I might respond to that knock at the door. Yeah. But Grace, I'm going to turn this over to you a little bit. Longtime industry professional, you're marketing director at Insight Analytical. Talk to us from the trenches of getting out there, selling these things, selling change. I guess let's talk about that. We'll get to the product in a second, but here's a better mousetrap. I'm fine with my mousetrap. I catch all the mouses I need, all the mice I need to catch. What's it been like for you? And just maybe even talk a little bit about your journey in the industry from sales since 2013 to today, and kind of what you've seen. What do you see work, and what are some of the doors that you get slammed of? Geez, I have no interest in doing something different.
Yes. Okay. Well, sales in the last probably, since 2013 it has been trenches for sure. It has been a war scene out here for sure. There's no questions asked. But I think when you're asking the question about the mousetrap, and I would ask, are they catching all the mice? And that's kind of the thing that we're doing at Insight. Are we capturing everything we need to capture? Are we optimizing your product all the way to the end? And that's what products like analyzers and online analyzers and products that Insight Analytical does and sells, is optimize, make you more money. We're not leaving money on the table kind of thing. So products like that, they're easy to sell, but the idea of change is big. There's products in the industry that are being used currently right now that really don't work, and I haven't been with Insight that long. I've been with Insight really only for 3 months. So bear with me as I'm explaining my scenario here.
Yep,
in the Insight
I appreciate
space.
The context.
But what I have seen in these 3 short months is that there's product out in the field to analyze composition that just don't work, and they're just sitting out there doing nothing. And most of the time, that's because what I'm learning, anyways, and correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, is improper application and installation was not done properly, or there wasn't the proper questions being asked prior to these products being put in or whatnot. So one of the things that I'm learning at Insight is we're asking the questions ahead of time to really truly understand what it is that you need as a solution, not just us coming in and saying, hey, we have this product. Anybody could do that, but are we coming up with a solution, and have we fixed what maybe is going on out there for you, and then changing your mind on the analyzer space, and that these products do work if we ask the appropriate questions and if we have the right I guess, synergies come to play, if you will.
So curious for you guys, for something like this is almost be interesting. Like, you're not coming in with a brand new idea. This is something existing that people are aware of, but maybe what they think about this thing, analyzers more specifically, and we'll unpack that technically a little bit in a second. But I'm always curious, like as a marketer, I've got somebody that maybe thinks their problem's solved, or that thing's never really worked for us. So there's kind of a negative shadow that falls on top of the whole setup. So from your guys' perspective, is it more that? Is it more, and of course I want to talk about the last bunch of years, how companies have been looking to optimize and do more with less and be efficient and kind of squeeze every penny out if they can. But is this a little bit of a black box or maybe a black shadow? And Phil, we're on video here, so I can see him nodding yes. Talk to us a little bit about having to change a mind space from like, hey, this technology actually is valuable, and no, it isn't just something you bought a bunch of years ago and paid money for that didn't help you. Because that's a reality when you're trying to shift mindset, right?
Yeah, it's been one.
Whoever wants to grab that one.
Sure, I'll start. I mean, it's been a big uphill battle, really, because there's been a lot of equipment that's installed. If you go to any operating gas plant or refinery in Alberta, you can go in there and say, hey, show me some of the stuff that's hanging on a wall that you guys don't use anymore. And they've got gear all over the place that they go, yeah, we just shut this thing off. It never worked. And fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with the analyzer itself. It's all been implementation or put in the wrong technology in for an application.
Okay, so and is that just the fact that was there just people out selling gear to sell gear and not like, because there's the whole thing around it, and that's, or is it also companies going, no, we don't need to buy the service package because we already get it. Well, don't worry, we got this. We're engineers, we're smart, we know what we're doing. I'm just trying to understand it a little bit because I think this is obviously a bigger issue than what just you guys have faced with your piece. I think it's more of a commentary on big industry in general.
And I think it's been sadly it's been a bit more of the people looking for opportunistic sales. You know, hey, I've got gear. I know people have used it in your kind of plant before someplace else. And so I'm going to try to sell this to you, even though I know maybe it didn't work so well. We actually had a customer in recently was talking to us about how he got pitched a certain piece of technology. And the guy said, well, we installed them at this other plant. And he said, when I talked to the other plant, they told me, yeah, we installed them, but they never worked.
That's the risk of like just chasing the sale, right?
Yeah.
And meeting your monthly quotas and all that. How much, like for the industry, obviously Phil, both of you have been in the industry for extended periods of time. How much has the industry changed? Like I've had certain clients, and I'm maybe referencing my own conversations of like people in the field have got shunted around. They've got more stuff on their plate. You've got guys, gals that are, in charge of certain areas now where they maybe were expert in one part of it, but now they've got all this stuff under their preview that they don't necessarily understand. They're not experts in. Maybe they don't want to admit that they're not experts in it. Like, how have you seen that shift over the last bunch of years as companies have really leaned out, specifically from a staffing and expertise perspective? Is it harder for the people out in the field that just have to know a little bit about kind of everything, or am I oversimplifying the whole story? Grace, what are your thoughts?
Field and then I guess downtown, if you will.
Okay, let's talk about them differently.
Operate differently. Field for sure with the layoffs, from 2013, really the heavy layoffs in 2015. Alberta, BC, Saskatchewan was decimated. We were decimated those years. There was bloodshed all over downtown, as you know, and I hate to use such harsh words, but that's what
it was real.
like.
For anyone who lived through it, they won't be thinking you're exaggerating.
It was wild watching people walk out of buildings like that. Like I did witness that in 2015, and that's tough. So I was part of a layoff in 2015. 2015 myself. So, lucky I got back on my feet fairly quickly, but a lot of people did not. So with that being said, yes, absolutely, positions had more put onto them. People were taking on more roles and responsibility in areas that they didn't know or were able to speak to. And I would say that a lot of the decisions in my space and that, where I've been working lately, facility engineering and whatnot, those decisions came out of the field a lot of the times and moved into the downtown space. The engineering firms have always kind of been there in between the end users and whatnot, but supply chain and procurement have become quite the powerhouse in industry as of late, right? Whereas it used to be field engineer downtown would call Joe Blow out in the field, Mr. Field Guy, they'd have a discussion, things would get discussed, decisions would be made, but now it seems like there's more decisions being made facility engineering than into supply chain and procurement. And a lot of the times, I think in in my experience in supply chain, and I'm not trying to knock that area, they may not understand fully what's going on in the application to put forward ideas or equipment or, certain tools that might optimize a field or maybe work better out in the field or whatnot. So that's just kind of one perspective on that.
It's certainly, it's not to criticize,
we've leaned out.
but yeah, we're forcing.
There's no criticism. It's just change.
We're forcing people to be generalists in areas that do require some deep technical expertise. Like that's a tough dichotomy when you put those two together. And then for you guys now coming in with a technically oriented product that maybe has a, you're kind of moving the idea uphill. Yeah, we already have that piece of gear and it didn't work. It didn't work for us. So, if I'm even going to be in the conversation, why is yours different? So let's get into let's geek out a little bit because I'm getting way outside my comfort zone here. But Phil, tell us, how do these things work? You obviously, you partnered with this product out of the US because you believed in it. You said, hey, you know what? This is legit. this black box of magic that comes out of this, so much tech until you understand it. It's just a black box that you bolt to a wall. But what was it about what you guys picked and can ultimately, what's the real upside and value it creates for the companies you sell to?
So, yeah, I mean, these guys kind of had it's always, everybody wants to say they're revolutionary, but revolutionary new way of doing things. And so traditional products that have been put out in the field were always based first on something that worked really well in the lab. So, but a lab, you got clean environment, temperature control, everything's, perfect sample. Oh, my sample's dirty, I'll run it through a filter first and all that sort of stuff. Product fluids in the field are dirty and messy to deal with. And so these guys implemented a technology that instead of using a bunch of mechanical parts and little bits of tubing and moving parts, like as in a traditional analyzer, like a gas chromatograph or a vapor pressure analyzer, they used infrared light and shot a beam of light across the sample. And look at how the colors of the light changed as they went across the sample and said, we can interpret everything from looking at the pattern in that light. And no moving parts.
I got my old science hat on. That's a very easy to understand, and certainly it sounds very simplistic.
Yeah, and it is a simplified method of describing it, if you like, because there's not some complexities that come into it. But the big thing about it is it's got big pieces of tubing and pipe running through a place where the liquid flows, so it doesn't plug off and get dirty like a bunch of the other stuff does out in the field. And because it's based on what it sees in the light, it's really fast. So you can start to do process control. The analogy I use is, imagine trying to drive your car but at constant speed, but you're only allowed, the speedometer only comes on for 1 second every 10 minutes.
Okay, got it. Yeah,
that's what traditional analyzers are like.
I see speeding tickets in my future.
Yeah. Lost my background.
Okay, so from a technology perspective, it's they made a better mousetrap, arguably, and I know that's an oversimplified way. So talk to me a little bit about, you started this back in 2015, you're in the downturn, you've got what you believe is a sound product in a market that maybe already thinks they know about the problem you're solving. How has been building the business? Like, let's talk about the nuts and bolts of putting a team together and doing this, and was this just you? Did you kind of get funding a little bit? Like, talk to us a little bit about the journey of, it all sounds great when we're X amount of years later and you've got a team and it's working, but how were those first couple of years? Was it super lean? Was it you and a brochure in the trunk of your car? I'm really oversimplified that.
Pretty much. It was me and my little Bible.
Okay, all right. That wasn't far off.
Yeah. My white shirt.
Bible salesman in the black name tag on your left side.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that. Was that like, did you get some traction and kind of fund it, or did you bring in some investors, or kind of what was that journey from you kind of with your business owner hat on? So,
yeah, it's all been self-funded. We got some help from banks, business development bank and stuff like that. They're always willing to, if you're willing to sign your life away, they'll always give you money.
You put enough on the line, someone will give you money.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But, so that's why I say I kind of started in 2013, but didn't incorporate till 2015. A lot of the door knocking was happening 2014, 2015-ish. And then, we got to the point where we actually started to get some traction. I had a colleague at Encana who said, hey, I can't commit to putting this new technology in at our new plant we're building, but I will fund a study done by a major engineering company to see if they think the technology is a good fit for what we want to do.
You got to follow their process, right?
And so, I mean, that was a huge thing for us, right? Because this big engineering company came out and said, hey, we wrote a 200-page report for you here and did this whole evaluation, and we think this is a good idea for you guys to try. And that let us get a big major customer like in Canada on board.
I've often heard in Calgary or in Alberta that there's a big lineup to be second. How hard is it to get that first, person to go to the ball with you?
Yeah, that's always the tough thing, right? Because everybody goes, well, we had 0 installed base, not a 1 in Canada. Technology that had never been used in Canada. And it is so good that when I would describe it to people about all the features it has, the first thing they would say is, yeah, well, that sounds too good to be true.
Yeah.
Now, I almost had to.
We've all learned if it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Exactly.
Or unfortunately not in this case.
Yeah.
But obviously this was installed and in play down in the US. Does that, when Canada, when some of those big operators look at some of these big operators in the US, I'm assuming that there was track record, or was it simply, well, you're not in our market, you're not in our formation, you're not in our substrates? Like, was that a bit of like, yeah, but you don't get us kind of thing? Was that a challenge?
There's a little bit of that. Certainly both cross borders, both way. You try to bring a Canadian technology down to the US. You know, Grace is, we're trying to sell stuff down in the US, and they go, well, where's your US office? Well, we don't have one yet. Yeah.
Click.
Yeah, and same here, up here, you know, they're going, well, it works down in the US, you know, but it's not minus 45 down there, and, you know, they have every reason why we're different, right?
Of course. Which again, for other experiences might be true, just not in this one. So Grace, talk about that from a director and a marketing perspective. How do you tell that story, or how do you overcome that objection? Because there's lots of companies listening going right now going, yes, I just had that objection 3 times this week because I don't have boots on the ground in Houston or wherever the case may be. How do you tackle that?
Speaking from a past life, I guess that if you really want U.S. business, there does come a point where you have to get some type of your boots have to stay permanently on the ground down there. So
that is a real thing. That's kind of a make or break.
Absolutely. There was an office set up in Houston for the company that I used to work for in the past, and that's a satellite office, but there was an address and there was a phone number and there was presence in the U.S. At this point, there are 2 representatives down there now for those guys, but you do need to be down there. You need to be in Texas, depending on what play you want to be involved in.
Yeah, I just picked Houston because I felt that was a safe jurisdiction to pick.
And that's Houston and Texas and all those areas are those are areas that Canada wants. The technology that Canada has, we want to go down there if it's applicable and get it down there. But in my opinion, you have to have somebody working those areas if you want to get it done. It's you can do it remotely, but man, oh man, that's a challenge. And we've seen that over COVID, being restricted to, sales can be done, absolutely. But there's something to be said about being on the ground and being in person and shaking hands with somebody and having that one-on-one with them. And that's how you gain their trust and that's how you can really prove your product to them. Is if you're, I'm not saying you can't do it online. It's for sure that.
No, but I appreciate the honesty.
If you want to penetrate a market, though, if you want to penetrate a certain area, you got to be there. You have to be there in some way.
Mm-hmm. Curious, just putting my marketing hat on, you guys clearly have invested in your website, which historically sometimes the energy sector or the industrial sector in general shies away from the digital world, the world of digital marketing. The last 2 years has taught us anything. More people are doing their own research. So curious, you guys have clearly leaned in on that. So from a sales perspective, we talked about being boots on the ground, but when it talks to marketing and qualifying some of those leads and getting like your name out there, has digital played a big part for you guys, or like what role has it played?
Oh, I got to give Phil, like I said this to Phil, when onboarding and whatnot, there was attention drawn to him over COVID because of his pivoting onto that online space. Insight realized what was going on and took the show online, basically, is what happened. Webinars were going down. There was a constant presence on there. The website was built up, and I can let Phil speak to that more, as I wasn't present for that building of all of that, but we've got an amazing young man named Jaden who is phenomenal on that front, and who is, with the support of Phil and team, built that website and built the content in there and has made it so that it is fluid when you visit our website.
Well, which it stands out. That's why I asked, for sure, because it definitely was noticeable, to the point of basically having, e-commerce functionality. And I don't know how many times I've argued with people that are like, oh no one would ever buy our product online. I'm like, A lot of people said that before Amazon came along too. So you got to be, I joke, when's Amazon your competitor? Well, kind of always, because it's teaching your customer to act differently, even if what you sell isn't on Amazon, to be clear. So Phil, talk a bit about that, because clearly for a lot of companies that feels like a risk sometimes to go. And let's be honest, it takes money and that's a finite thing. You've clearly invested in that. And now I'm really putting my marketing hat on, because you guys stand out in your space from my perspective.
Well, thanks. I like to think we do too. In some ways, it was a bit fortuitous, because one of my other sideline gigs was I would travel the world teaching 5-day courses on how to design these kind of analyzer systems. And when COVID kicked in, there was no travel anymore. But I had customers who still wanted it done. So we said, hey, we'll do it as an online course. So I quickly had to pivot and set up so I could do long online courses. And then we said, well, talking to the sales and marketing team, we said, well, we used to do lunch and learns in engineering company offices. Let's just launch this as webinars. And we had webinar series. We had one, we were trying to send out 4 packs of beer to people and call it Indulging with Insight. And and come online, have a beer with us, and we're going to talk about products and services and problems in the industry and stuff like that.
How did did it get traction right away? Because COVID's gone through some cycles where people were like trying to get as much connection as they could. Then there was a little fatigue. I now find it's kind of leveled out. But I appreciate that early to the table really paid off, I think, in COVID. Because a lot of companies are just getting there now, but the world's already shifted. So kudos for you guys for just being on it. And sometimes, fortuitous necessity, like just get out of our own way and get it done is what I'm hearing loud and clear.
Yeah, we had launched we launched our online services by April, probably. If you figure COVID kind of hit really around February, as everybody started freaking out and stopping travel, we were up and running doing webinars and online courses by April. And
now, did the business grow because of it? Like, did you see a slowdown, or did actually your ability to pivot into that? And and I'm not asking the numbers, but I'm kind of asking the numbers. How did it actually, what was the ROI? Like, did it work?
Our business typically has a long sales cycle. But what we definitely saw was we got to start talking to customers that we had difficulties getting in to see before. It was difficult to set up a meeting, but all of a sudden they go, oh, I'll come on this webinar. Especially if you start to think of catchy titles like, we sell another analyzer to measure, in natural gas pipelines, they worry about whether there's water in the natural gas pipeline. And so we entitle a webinar called Got Wet Gas. And then we talk about the analytics for how you solve that problem, right? But you want to catch people's attention, hook them, and then they go, well, I'll read this. And they go, oh, I'll go to that.
Power of you get a third of a second to get 3 seconds to get then the 30 minutes of the webinar.
Yeah.
No, I really appreciate you guys, and as a marketer, and we spend a lot of time in the B2B space, and it's still a struggle. There's a lot of B2B companies, or I don't want to use B2B as oversimplified, industrial focused companies like, oh, our product is very technical, like marketing doesn't work for us. We've got really long sales cycles, nobody finds us online. Like, we have to go out and sell to them. But yeah, you've got customers that now want to do their own research. There's no barrier, like to come down to your office and go to a lunch and learn, that takes half my day, but to jump online and do a 30-minute webinar. So I'm seeing a big shift, but not all companies are there yet. So exciting kudos to you guys for just kind of getting there right away and figuring it out as you go. Because that's a little bit sometimes what it feels like. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks. We got a great team. Everybody's been we've been talking about, okay, how do we, what are we going to do? Everybody's pretty committed to trying to make it succeed. So we said, what do we got to do?
Take that energy and point in the right direction. So talk to me a little bit about, we've got $100 oil, or whatever it happens to be at today. We've got governments, we've got an ecosystem, we've got a tech startup boom, we've got all kinds of things going on. So Phil, you've obviously been in this ecosystem for a long time, or been in this marketplace. What are you seeing out there? Like, what gets you excited about what's happening in Alberta / Calgary? What would you just blast out of the way if you could? There's the rest of the show there.
Yeah. We'll start with the excited part, because we'll be positive. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's like, you're right. Like, the big thing I think we're seeing is we are seeing a bit more diversification in the Calgary economy. We're starting to see tech companies coming in. We're also even starting to see, like, there's companies, they kind of compete with us in an area, a company called Validare, where they're bringing high-tech digital services to try to say, hey, we're going to look at all of your analytical measurements and put them into a database for you and make it so data is accessible. So people are starting to look at how to apply technology all across our traditional industries, and then also bringing in all of the the new stuff that's coming in, like Amazon, and these guys are starting to say, hey, we're going to build an office in Calgary because it's got a beautiful downtown, a young workforce that's very motivated. There's a lot of things going for Calgary and for Alberta, right?
Yeah, agreed.
As the economy gets stronger with the oil and gas industry, these other companies on the tech side are looking at, wow, I got a city that has tons of engineers in it, has lots of people who've been involved in the sales and marketing of expensive products, and so yes, they can build an infrastructure here really easily. So I think it's a really exciting time for Alberta.
Excellent. I could not agree with you more. Now let's pull out our magic wand and say, you know what? I'm going to knock this out of the way and that out of the way and blaze a trail here. Anything that's more fits in the angst category? Oh, the angst. I feel this one's going to be more entertaining.
Yeah. I love Grace and I get out and chat, and we both get pretty angsty about the whole thing, the politics side. Mm-hmm.
So you just amp each other up. What do you think? Like, obviously there's so much unrest and so much polarization. It seems like to be for one thing, you have to be against something else. We feel like we've lost the ability to have kind of any kind of a middle, which is where often the reality of the world lives, is in the gray area. But we seem to be so divided on so many fronts. What are you seeing, and kind of maybe what would you change if you could?
I think there's this whole perspective that that an energy transition can be done quickly. I'm not against the idea that we maybe that an energy transition. I started in the nuclear industry, and back in
interesting.
I don't have all this white hair for no reason. I mean, back in the 80s, we were saying, hey, Greenpeace already knows the solution to pollution. They just don't like it. Because we said,
I like that a lot. Yeah. Tell us more.
Well, I mean, because they said, like, we knew that nuclear power had no CO2 emissions, no sulfur, no acid rain emissions. So, in the 70s and 80s, the big thing was acid rain, right? Sulfur dioxide, NOx emissions from all these coal-fired plants and burning. Everything was burning something, right? And so we're saying, just make all your electricity from nuclear and all those pollution issues go away. But that was not the problem with some of these organizations. Is they're really almost anti-technology rather than anti-pollution.
Right.
Now there's people fighting against wind because they say, well, it's visually bad, it vibrates the ground, it kills eagles, and so they're telling you all the things that are wrong about wind power. And then there are people who say, then you cover all this land that could be good farmland and put solar panels on it. So they're telling you all the things that are wrong with solar. So there's people who are just never going to be satisfied unless we truly do get all of our energy from unicorn farts. I mean...
Yep, no, 100%. And that is interesting, kind of that, I've had chatted with some different people in the show, and like this kind of like almost anti-project, like Canada's become so against anything of any magnitude that could actually create change on a bigger scale. And I don't know how many years and some of the statistics the last time that a major project was actually even completed in Canada. It's really interesting, but based on being so resource rich, and like you said, why Canada, we should lead the way, we have the technology, but this angst that kind of creates in between, it feels like Alberta is kind of, because of $100 oil. Yeah, I'm curious how this journey is going to play out as energy transition is still top of the conversation, but yet there's some money moving around to allow some of these big energy companies to have some bandwidth and some capital to invest in some of these other projects. And I don't know, I do not have a crystal ball, but I choose to be optimistic, which I guess optimism is a choice. So from the perspective of what you guys see as being a business here, and customers, Grace, you guys are focusing on Canada. Is this a global opportunity for you guys in terms of business growth? Or right now, is it like, let's really get Western Canada and some specific areas in the US locked down? Like, what do you guys see going back to, I love exporting Calgary awesomeness around the world. And there's a lot of companies now that are thinking a lot bigger than our borders.
Yeah, absolutely. And Phil would probably be able to speak a bit more to that. But, obviously very much so Canada from the to mid to downstream space. Even in the refined fuel space, we can definitely be of use in that area. Absolutely, and we do have some installations in Canada on that front already.
Okay.
Absolutely, the United States we have definitely chatted about. Internationally, we have chatted about. Phil would be able again to speak further to any of the bigger international stuff as far as what we've engaged in the past and what we're hoping to maybe do in that sense. But definitely Western Canada or Canada as a whole, and then niches in the United States for sure are targets. And all aspects or all sectors of industry for sure, not just oil and gas.
Not just oil and gas. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So Phil, when you think about
mining, agricultural, there's several areas that we want to be exploring. Not just oil and gas. The diversification needs to be part of our plan.
Well, and I appreciate that. Even going on your website, like this isn't an energy play. Like I don't think oil and gas when I look at your site. You guys have clearly positioned yourself. Phil, to that end, how does a company in Calgary, when you think about global expansion, what does that look like to you, and what gets you excited about it? And again, what real challenges do you see?
Yeah, it certainly is a challenge. We're sort of always trying to figure that out. We've been really. Again, we kind of sort of said, I kind of almost view it like a military analogy. You want to build a really good beachhead first. And so if you're going to do an invasion, you want to build a beachhead, right? So first we said, let's dominate what we do in Western Canada, figure out all of our problems that we have, build the ability to service all of our stuff, and then start looking for key markets where we perhaps have some opportunities. So again, Houston, you brought up. It turns out I've been involved with the analyzer industry for a long time. And we got, going back to this digital marketing thing, we ended up getting this wonderful opportunity. There was a big conference going to go on in the States, and the people behind the conference said, we are still worried about COVID. We don't want to let people come face to face. And so a group of senior guys, Exxon, Shell guys, said, we actually want to have a physical conference. So we're going to promote it through a Houston group, but we don't have a website and we don't have all the abilities to market it. And I knew all these guys, and so they're marketing it actually through one of our websites right now. So we're promoting a big technology conference in the US. We're going to exhibit there, and that's going to be part of our big launch. Our big launch in the US this year.
Fantastic. With a boots on the ground strategy that's going to be amplified with digital and having the right partners. Because that's what I think it's so easy to forget. It's still all connected. Mm-hmm. It isn't one or the other. It is this journey, and we're only about in person or only about trade shows. But you got to get everybody excited to then get them on the ground for that one opportunity. Now, I love to hear that, you guys work in an innovative space with what you do technology wise, but your willingness to kind of break out of the mold of this is the way we've always done it kind of mindset, which we all know what happens then. That leaves you stagnant and quickly, in a grave on the sidelines of companies that had good ideas that didn't get to go anywhere. Hey, I'm going to ask you something, Phil. I'm going way off topic here, taking to your background. Modular nuclear, small footprint nuclear reactors. Is that a viable? Do we see that coming back as something that? And I've been on a couple podcasts where that's come up. And since you brought up the word nuclear, I'm picking your brain now, way off topic. Is that something we're going to go back to? Is that even on the table, or is it still a story that nobody wants to talk about?
I think you're starting to see it getting some traction now. You're starting to see countries sort of going, yeah, we'd be willing to do this. For the longest time, there was this whole not in my backyard thing, right? I don't want to build in my area, right? But I think people have, in this whole looking at the energy transition, they've seen that some of the things they've been trying to do, we just look at what's going on in Europe right now, hasn't quite panned out as planned.
Yep.
Yeah. Shut down all your nuclear reactors.
It's a very kind way. It's a kind way to say it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's also an interesting. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm thinking out loud. I'm just saying it's so easy to be discriminatory when you have energy abundance in your backyard. Mm-hmm. When you don't have energy abundance or energy scarcity, and as the West, we're so privileged because we can just leave lights on and not even think twice about it because we don't have to worry about rolling blackouts coming through our communities. And I don't know. There's just so much around where we're positioned from when you look at other aspects of the world where it's a little bit of an altruistic view because we're so spoiled. To be blunt.
And because
we're spoiled, but I think we could. Oh, sorry. No. Go ahead.
Chris. This is the hair. This is where we get into it. Yeah. Grace, go ahead. I'll turn it to you.
No, I think, we have all of these beautiful natural resources that we could easily exploit in the most ethical way. We just need some pipelines in the ground to do it. We need our
that's a whole
government to
other
get
bigger
the hell out of the way.
conversation.
And you asked Phil, who do you want out of the way? Well, if I may, at this point, this is where we're going to talk certain politicians, that if we want to do this properly and environmentally, and we have Indigenous communities on side in this space, like they want to see these things happen. We have federal officials who are in the way and not letting things happen due to, in my opinion, back deal doors that obviously don't want to see the East and West connect. So we need that out of the way in order for us to do this environmentally. Moving crude and our product by rail, I've been in that space for years. That is not the safest way to be moving these products. A pipeline is. A pipeline will give people jobs. It will move product. It will bring billions of dollars to this nation. Why the stall? I've got lots of reasons as to why I think that is. But that's what's got to get out of the way in order for us to exploit what we have and be the world leaders that we are.
Grace, thank you. That was an excellent. I appreciate when someone just grabs the soapbox and gets on it and just lets her fly. You touched on a bunch of things, but I love it. I love it. Hey, if they're still listening 37 minutes in, they clearly like us. So they're clearly curious what we have to say about the world. It's my test. When you get to the end, it's okay. I love what you said, and I've had a handful of Indigenous guests on the show, or I'm not saying they're representative for all the nations, but there is a pro industry, let's work together, let's do things. That's not a narrative that gets pulled up into mainstream media sometimes of the us versus them. And I've talked to, again, a handful of guests on the show, very involved in this province, in the Indigenous different nations and different communities, and their story was all about let's work together, but let's just do it right. But let's do this. Like there was no let's not. And I think that's an interesting narrative that the media chooses the thread, the string it wants to pull. But
remembering the media, though, remembering who operates and owns the media, who it's funded by, and the stories and the narratives that they want to share. Mainstream media, I mean. What happened at Coastal just a few weeks ago, right? There were many communities that came out and said, we do not endorse what's going on up here on this front. This is not a reality of what's happening. But you did not see that on CBC. You did not see those statements on. You have to dig deep and go digger and dig to find those narratives that are happening to get the truth of what's really taking place up there. And, all too often, most people don't do the digging to really find out. They read the headlines.
Because it's harder work, right? It's because we're all busy. We're busy running our companies. We're busy trying to do podcasts and make things happen, and we skim over headlines. And no, I appreciate you guys sharing your perspective and your story and talking about the realities of running a business. And it's all about timing. Going back to your joke. So I don't know about your boxing skills, but you were certainly your punchlines and your timing was pretty good, Phil. So I'm going to give you points on that one for sure.
Oh, thank you.
Circling back to the beginning of our call. But I love what you guys are doing. And I love that you took the risk of bringing something that you believed in into this market, and then took the hard task of kind of pushing an idea uphill, of getting a new idea into the mind of your consumers and helping them to solve a problem in a way that they think already was solved or can't be solved, and I don't want to bother. And never to underestimate, selling a new idea is one thing. Selling up against a customer who goes, well, no, I already know what you sell and I don't need that, or it didn't work for me. That's really challenging. And I think there's a lot of empathy needs to go out for companies out there that are doing that work and spending the time to do the webinars and get customers out. And I'm happy to always showcase companies like yours, because it's clear you guys are willing to do it a little bit different to make an impact. And last question, and Phil, this seems like a narrative for you, but how much of your North Star and what really you believe in and what's important to you, how much has that been a driver for you to kind of in those tough days when you're like, okay, another knocking on another door, but how's the pledges that purpose side of it been a factor for you during this whole journey?
It's been a pretty big deal. I occasionally, people around here, my joke around here is usually, you know what, I should have made gravel. I should have bought big rocks, crushed them, made little rocks, and had people buy the little rocks so I could buy more big rocks. That would have been a lot easier. Selling technology is hard, but I really do believe, I think there's a better way. Oftentimes there's a better way to do things. There's a way that can be more efficient, that can help companies make money, can create jobs. On this oil and gas thing, it drives me nuts, because going back to this pipeline things, we've changed the direction of some pipelines that used to flow material into the US. So we can bring natural gas condensate back up to Canada through those pipelines. And that helps us dilute bitumen so we can ship it. One of the things we do is we're trying to help plants in Alberta make more condensate. So we import less and use more local product. So every once in a while I get my good guy's little zealous angel halo going with it, but I do believe we're doing something good. And we just had an internal meeting, kind of a day-long meeting, like a State of the Union address. And it was I was really happy because I had this about hour and a half presentation that was about core values of the company. And I made it 5 years ago. And I gave it again at this new one. And I said to Grace afterwards, I said, you know what's pretty cool? Is I didn't change a single slide in that presentation. Those are still our values. This is how we do business. And we do things like, we brought in a policy as soon as we started looking like things were, we're going to survive COVID and all that sort of stuff. We brought in a policy that with every purchase order that comes in, we put a percentage of that purchase order to a charity. And we pick a charity. If a guy in Grand Prairie buys an analyzer, we say, hey, we're going to make a donation to Grand Prairie's Kids Sport or whatever. And it's part of being
we just did one yesterday.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Scott, our sales and service director, he was just up in Grand Prairie giving a check to Kids Sport yesterday.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. I'm so glad I asked that question at the end. I think it's so important. And we live in a society now where that is so much, considered a necessity, but not every company does it. To hear you guys have done something and you didn't overcomplicate it. Hey, if what's important to you in your community, we're going to give you a percentage back. Like it doesn't, sometimes these things get blown out of proportion and they get too complicated that they don't survive. I love that you guys just made it kind of a one-to-one. That's awesome. Kudos to you guys. That's great. I love that.
Thanks. Yeah, we even did a thing when we didn't get to do, but we tried to, it just again with COVID. There's a police station nearby, and the end of September, there's a police appreciation day at the end of September. And so we had gone over to them to say, I like to barbecue. I bought my green egg into the shop. And I said to we went over to the local police station and we said, hey, on that police appreciation day, we're going to put the barbecue outside and any officer who comes by, free lunch. Now, turns out they said
good for you guys.
COVID shut her down, but we're planning to do that every year now.
Well, intention. Next year comes around COVID. We'll blame COVID for everything. Yes, it is. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on the show. Insight-analytical.com. Check it out. You guys have a great website. It's well done. I appreciate, again, I'm a marketer, so I appreciate when someone puts effort into their website, which is obvious that you have done. What are the best ways for people to get a hold of you? Phil, if someone wants to reach out to you or Grace, is it LinkedIn? What are the best ways?
You could email. Well, Phil would be a direct email. We can get us on LinkedIn. We've got a great YouTube channel as well that's loaded with all types of
sweet. I didn't check out your
videos
YouTube
and all
channel.
that. Yeah, absolutely awesome channel there. We've got tons of information on that, but LinkedIn as well. But I'm G Corry at insight-analytical.com, and then it's Phil at insight-analytical.com.
Yeah, you guys and you guys are both on LinkedIn, and you're both easy to find on there for sure. But thank you guys. That was an awesome conversation. I enjoyed learning about your business and getting to know you both a little bit better. And thank you for the time.
Yeah, it was great, Todd. Let's do it again.
This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. It's a date.